You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday, 28th of July 2014. Preston and Bradford local authorities fly Palestinian flag to support Hamas. Killer brothers flee after senior London judge gives them bail. HSBC Bank to close Muslim charity accounts as Gaza protests escalate. French police discover arsenal on bus heading for London. Anti-Semitism on the march, Europe braces for violence. Imminent and credible terror attack on Norway. An interview with Nick Griffin, president of the British National Party. Islamic Jihad said to have Iranian Judgment Day missile. Australia's Muslims allegedly shocked by ISIS Australian jihadists. Anglican Vicar end very near for Iraqi Christians. And finally, 2 for 1 day, Monday. UK news. Preston and Bradford local authorities fly Palestinian flag to support Hamas. Preston City Council, which is run by the Labour Party, was forced to change its plans to fly the Palestinian flag over the town hall following protests and complaints. Council leader Peter Rankin said, "I'm pleased to be able to demonstrate our sympathy with the Palestinians through raising their flag over the town hall. We are also exploring other ways in which we can help and support Gaza." But the initial plans had to be altered following complaints. Instead, the Palestinian flag flew for just 4 minutes before being replaced. The flag is then reported to have been auctioned off, raising around £1,500 and perhaps therefore making the council complicit in fundraising with a pro-Hamas organisation. While in Bradford, the Palestinian flag has been raised outside Bradford City Hall to recognise the suffering and deaths of hundreds of people in Gaza, the council said. Labour leader of Bradford Town Council David Green said the authority was not taking sides in the conflict. Mr Green told BBC Radio Leeds the flag is not being raised in support of the one side of the conflict, i.e. Hamas or the Israeli army. The flag is being flown in recognition of the suffering and death of hundreds of people in Gaza. Last week, Bradford East Liberal Democrat MP David Ward apologised for comments he made about the conflict on Twitter. Mr Ward tweeted on Tuesday, "The big question is, if I lived in Gaza, would I fire a rocket? Probably yes." World at 8. The main point is that Israel is suffering as well. It's best the media stop being so one-sided and that we just stop reporting it at all. It's hardly our concern. When you are seen to back one group against another and the UK is directly not effective physically, fly both flags and be impartial. Another question is, would Ward defend his own country against Islam? Because now Ward is clearly demonstrating that he would not. Killer brothers flee after senior London judge gives them bail. A top judge allowed 2 convicted killers out on bail, then had to issue a warrant for their arrest when they didn't turn up at court. Judge Brian Barker QC, the Recorder of London, allowed Lithuanians Volodya Tarasov, 35, and his brother Jurius, 33, to stay free last week after they and older brother Victoras, 39, were convicted of manslaughter. All 3 denied the charge. Only Victoria's turned up for sentence at the Old Bailey. After the embarrassing decision to let them go, police believe the 2 killers are trying to flee to Eastern Europe. Judge Barker said, "I expect they'll be caught reasonably quickly. When they are, the court will set a sentence date." Victoria's was remanded in custody. World at 8. First of all, I hope they get to whence they came and don't return. These prats and similar cases cost the British taxpayer millions of money with their not guilty pleas and subsequent imprisonments. We are paying through the nose for these retards over here anyway. HSBC Bank to close Muslim charity accounts as Gaza protests escalate. HSBC Bank is to follow its competitors Barclays in closing the bank accounts of the Ummah Welfare Trust (UWT), a Muslim-run charity which has previously been accused, though cleared, of having links to terrorism. The non-profit organisation, which describes itself as an international relief and development charity, has previously given money to Interpol, an organisation designated by the US Treasury in 2003 as one of several groups providing support to Gaza-based terrorist outfit Hamas. World date. It isn't for nothing London is called Londistan, is it? European news. French police discover arsenal on bus heading for London. Police in Calais have discovered what French news media are calling un véritable arsenal de guerre, a veritable arsenal of war, on board a London-bound bus. A Eurolines bus left Amsterdam bound for London via Calais last week when border police searched baggage and found 3 loaded automatic pistols, 3 Smith & Wesson revolvers and a semi-automatic Luger, as well as 2 Italian-made firearms, a Czech-made firearm, a silencer and almost 500 rounds of 9mm ammunition. World at 8. I suppose no effort has been made to find out who put them there, has it? Anti-Semitism on the march. Europe braces for violence. Fears of violence and anti-Semitism at major protest marches planned in Berlin and other German cities this weekend against Israeli operations in Gaza. European cities are braced for violent clashes this weekend as people take to the streets to protest against Israeli military operations in Gaza. Thousands of police are being deployed in cities across Europe, with Berlin alone deploying 1,500 police officers in response, and authorities in Paris have sought to ban outright marches planned for this weekend. The protests have triggered warnings that the spectre of anti-Semitism has returned to haunt Europe. Protesters have attacked synagogues, smashed the windows of Jewish-owned businesses and torched others in scenes disturbingly reminiscent of the 1938 Kristallnacht. The marchers have chanted Jews to the gas chambers, and Jewish people have been attacked on the streets of Berlin. An 18-year-old Jewish man claimed on Friday he'd been punched in the face in an unprovoked attack while wearing a skull cap in the centre of Berlin, in what would be the second such incident in less than a week. World at 8. Where were these demos when Muslims were and still are killing Christians in Syria or Nigeria? Where are all the protesters then? Under their burqas, my friends. Europe still hasn't got the message. Islam is at the forefront of all these demonstrations, which is all hypocritical, as Hamas is still firing guns from civilian platforms and preventing the Gazans from leaving when warned. It all makes better publicity, doesn't it? Imminent and credible terror attack on Norway. We are now in a situation where there's a specific terror threat against Norway, said Justice and Public Security Minister Anders Adeosun as he opened an emergency press conference with the Police Security Service. PST Chief Benedict Bornland said that the service had received information from abroad indicating that people affiliated with a group in Syria were planning a terrorist attack on Norway within a few days. Measures have been taken to meet this threat, Adekunle said, reported Norwegian Broadcasting NRK. It was believed the group posing the threat had taken part in fighting in the Syrian conflict. It was not clear whether any Norwegian citizens were connected to the group or if any person living in Norway or on their way into the country was involved. It must be true because US officials have agreed, saying that there is a credible threat of a terror attack in Norway in the coming days. US officials said following Bornland's stark warning. World at 8. It would serve Europe right if there was a huge loss of life caused by Muslims. It would open the closed minds of Europe, who think that only the Jews fire guns. And now we have an interview with Nick Griffin, President of the British National Party, who talks today, among other things, about Russia and his first weekend away from his last 15 years of working within the British National Party. Hello Nick, good afternoon, and how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much, Lynn.
Jolly good. Now I've got some questions to ask you, about 3 of them, and I want your feedback on it. Since last autumn, in this wonderful article by Paul Craig Roberts, the US government have been lying through its teeth about the Ukraine, and it's all sort of culminating in the last shot down plane, Malaysian plane. What is your view on this particular stance? Do you think it's dangerous?
It's incredibly dangerous. Paul Craig Roberts, he's an American economist. He serves on the Treasury under the Reagan administrator, administration. He knows his stuff. He's getting on a bit now. I think he's 74, 75. But he runs a thing called the Institute for Political Economy, and he writes some stupendous articles. And the one you're referring to, I think, is headed "Washington's Beating the War Drums."
Yeah.
And it's a remarkable thing. As you say, the current beating is over the terrible shooting down of the Malaysian airliner, which self-evidently was not in the interests of Russia. Whether it was actually done by the Ukrainians or whether by ordering the airliner to change course and come down lower, whether they set up some rebels who didn't really know what they were doing to shoot it down. Either way, it's the Ukrainians clearly are responsible, which in turn means it's the EU and the United States are responsible, because they're the people who put this bunch of crazy looters and real fascists in power in the Ukraine.
Yeah. And also, apparently, Russia's being cleared of actually shooting down this plane, but of course you wouldn't know that by virtue of the media.
I hadn't heard that. No, the media is truly terrifying. There was a piece of mail the other day, or the two pieces side by side. One of them was making a huge hot song and dance about the fact that some of the bodies still, after a week in the sweltering heat of the Ukrainian summer, still haven't been collected, and how this was shocking and showed what monsters the Russians are. And then literally in the next article, they had pictures of a refrigerated morgue train, which they were transferring the bodies to, and they were saying that this shows how monstrous the Russians are, because this looked like a Nazi death train.
Yes, it did.
So whatever they do, they can't win. When you see that level of hysteria, you can see that what Paul Craig Roberts is talking about in terms of the way that these people are actually pushing us into war really is true.
It's very, very frightening. And of course, by demonising Putin, they're actually, the way they demonise Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Assad, and the Taliban and Iran, it's really looking for a kick-off. And of course, I read the awful bit about the nuclear war, the fact they think that they've got these various weapons that they could use that they haven't used before, and they think they would win, whereas in fact everybody knows that nobody would win a nuclear war. It wouldn't.
Yes, well, everybody knows it. Every child knows it.
Yeah.
But you're quite right that the people really running the United States, they take their views from things such as the Council on Foreign Relations, and the neocons have a genuine doctrine whereby they believe that America can launch, fight and win a nuclear war. So they've got a first strike doctrine. Everybody else, the British included, when you've had nuclear weapons, it's there as a deterrent. The USA have them openly, it's in their tactical doctrine, that they make a first use of them and take out everybody else. And the whole of the neocon strategy of dominating the world is to ensure that American arms are more powerful than all other combinations on the planet, and they can take out anybody before they threaten them. Which is exactly the same mentality, of course, as especially the British had with the fleet in the run-up to the First World War. So the British fleet had to be more powerful than the fleets of the next two nations combined. Which, of course, when Germany started to say, well, no, we're a serious economic superpower as well, we've got colonies overseas, we need a military fleet too. It's one of the things that pushed us to war, and it is terrifying. You mentioned, Lynn, the business about Gaddafi in Iraq and so on. You're quoting Craig Roberts' article here I've got, the destruction of 7 countries in whole or in part by the West in the 21st century, with the support of Western civilization and the Western media, comprises powerful evidence that the leadership of the Western world is devoid of moral conscience and human compassion. Now that Washington is armed with its false doctrine of nuclear primacy, the outlook for humanity is very bleak. It
isn't good at all, and because it lumps everything firmly in the almost pro-Muslim arena, because you can see what's happened to their countries, and although I'm, as you know, anti-Muslim in this country, you can see that they're not too happy about it, the way things are going. And of course, but we're now also in Europe. Europe is becoming very, very anti-Jewish. There's a huge Muslim sweep in France.
It's very unfair. Again, this is partly the media's fault. Because they so go along with the line that any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism and so on. They haven't publicised the fact there's enormous anti-war demonstrations against the Israeli armed forces brutality in Gaza, in Israel by various Jews, both ultra-religious Jews and secular Jews, and because of that, especially the frankly ignorant Muslim street, other people as well, decide, well, obviously, the Jews are all behind this. There is a neocon Zionist nexus very strongly. So ordinary Jews get the blame for what basically a mafia from their community is doing, which is as ludicrous as when the mafia in the USA or Italy do something bad. It's as ludicrous as becoming anti-Italian. But that's where we are, and certainly the neocon doctrine of war everywhere permanently is one of the things that has fed, like Craig Roberts said, smashing 7 countries this century alone, basically declaring war on the Muslim world. Well, in a way, you can't really blame them for being radicalised. So you certainly can't be surprised about it.
No, I'm not surprised at all. It's very, very bad, and of course it's going to put people into 2 camps. They're either going to be anti-Jew, anti-Semitic, or else they're going to be anti-Muslim. And it puts Europe in a very, very difficult situation, I believe.
The whole thing does, and of course it bears out our traditional nationalist policy, whereby we should keep out of other people's wars, look after our own business, and in the end, really, providing we're not giving vast amounts of arms to one side, through the EU aid to the other, then what the Israelis and the Palestinians do to each other is really their problem and up to them, and it's for us to interfere. And in the end, it's patently obvious that there has to be the only possible peaceful solution to the Ukrainian mess is a repartition of the country along its pre-communist lines, whereby the east goes back to Russia where it belongs, where its people want to be, and the western half, basically, yes, if they want to identify with the West, then, well, it's not really for us to stop them, but they can identify with the EU. I tell you, we don't want them in the EU that we're part of.
No.
There'll be another flood of cheap Eastern European immigrant labour.
And we've got enough as it is, frankly.
We should simply keep out of the whole damn lot.
Yes, I thoroughly agree with you there. Now, to get off that very depressing subject, what are the highlights of your last 15 years as chairman?
Oh, dearie me.
Briefly.
When I get time, I shall write the book, Lynn. I suppose, well, the highlights are taking... Bear in mind, before I took over, the party had only ever held one local council seat for just a few months, and it was believed to be unelectable. So the highlights are the first past the post win, which I basically organised as well as led when we won a seat in Blackburn with Robin Evans, and then just rolling victories after that. What else? At one point we had a cartoon in the Times showing David Cameron drowning while I rode back rode past him in a BMP-8. So seeing the whole ruling elite literally terrified of us, before of course they ganged up to, effectively to crush us. The 2 free speech trials, probably my fondest memory actually is after the second Leeds free speech trial. I think you were there, were you not?
Yes, I was.
Yes, I thought you were, yes. And many other good comrades too. At the end of the second one, I came out and we had several bottles of champagne, courtesy of Jean-Marie Le Pen, which I'd kept for a couple of years from his own label. So Mark Collett had one and I had the other, and we did what you normally do with champagne. But then I did spray it all over the place, then drank it. Well, that first is a waste really. But it's traditional, and we have to do traditional things because we're traditionalists.
We're traditional, exactly.
So I took the bottle of champagne and I thought, well, you know what, sod it, because I'd done a set of interviews and then there was still more TV cameras waiting. So I took the bottle of champagne and I went over to talk to them while I was drinking champagne, swinging it out of the bottle. Because I thought, this says victory, and let's face it, this is a huge victory, for me, for the party, and for free speech in general. And I was absolutely alive on that. We did about 15 minutes while they tried to shoot me down. I shut everything down in turn. You know what? They never used a single second of that footage, which tells you how good it was. A similar thing after I won the seats in the Northwest with the help of so many good people up there. We did a press conference the next day in Derek Adams' pub, the Ace of Diamonds, later closed down by the Labour Council because they determined to get rid of the BNP. So it basically illegally closed down, demolished, and still hasn't been redeveloped, that site. I did a press conference there, and again, every journalist under the sun was there, and I wiped the floor with all of them. That was tremendous fun. What else? Seeing how desperate they were when, in the run-up to the 2010 general election, the Daily Express ran 6 out of its 7 front pages in the week before, attacking the British National Party, and just forcing them to do things like that to us as a way to block us and so on was really quite something for a little ragbag peasant army that we are. And then I suppose the absolute final thing, of course, was being in Syria and understanding and hearing from the people there who'd spoken to the key BBC people in Syria, that they in turn had spoken to people back in Britain, and that they were convinced that the letter that I wrote for them was what had swayed enough Tory MPs to vote against the war to stop Britain going to war, which in turn stopped or forced Obama to put it to debate, which in turn gave President Putin the chance to step in and stop it.
Yes.
So basically understanding when it suddenly hit me that, my God, I actually played a role in that, of stopping Britain waste £500 million in 24 hours, killing decent people and letting throat-cutting, psychotic Islamist crazies into power in a lovely country.
Yes.
And knowing that having done that, whatever happens there, and of course it's still a ghastly mess, at least there's no British soldiers in there. They're hacking the heads off poor Syrian conscripts, but they're not catching British soldiers there and doing the same to them. And if I hadn't been there as a British National Party MEP, then we'd be there right now.
I know, and what's more, I think the government, obviously the government was so livid at that. This is why I think, to some extent, that we've got all this anti-Russian business now. They think if they're not going to get Putin one way, they're going to try and get him another.
Absolutely so, because it was all part of the same plan. It's dominoes. First of all, Libya, then Syria, then Iran, then Russia.
Yeah.
It's very, very beginning. If anyone thinks that this talk is a little bit crazy, unlikely, simply Google Project for the New American Century and neocons, and you'll find in their own words and all there in the public domain just how crazy these people are. They really are quite prepared to have a world war in order to ensure the domination of their people in Washington, D.C., which is most definitely not normal Americans. And obviously, you're married to one. I've been to the United States a number of times. They're a lovely, sweet, kind people with a tremendous folk culture. And let's face it, the very first victims of Washington/Yankee imperialism were the people of the South.
Yes, they were, and in fact they still are.
And they still are, and these crazy bastards have been expanding and trying to take over the world ever since.
Yeah, there's a huge.
We've gone from the highlights back to the horror. So
we'll end on something very good. And that is, how was your last weekend free of the burden of the British National Party?
Oh, it was tremendous, Lynn.
What did you do? Got me the sigh of relief.
I'm still burdened as you are with a degree of responsibility as a member of the Executive Council, but it's nothing like as much. So, with my huge sigh of relief, I extended a dry stone wall that I've had waiting to finish off for a long, long time. It looks lovely.
Dry stone walling. Oh, good.
Yes, so there's a couple of jobs that I really have always enjoyed doing. One is dry stone walling. Unfortunately, the stone up here in Wales is rather random. It's not like some of the South Country stone, where you might have limestone you can split and so on. Yeah. But it's still a grand job. Even better is pleaching or plashing or laying a hedge, which is when you cut it part way through and bend it and make it stock proof. Of course, that's for the winter time and so on. That's not for this time of year. Yeah. So they're absolutely lovely jobs. The one I nearly did, before I ended up leaving the BNP, I was, having worked in the woods, I was within inches of becoming a charcoal burner.
Oh, good God. Oh, lovely charcoal. I used to use charcoal in art school.
I could have had a lovely harmonious life in a wood in mid-Wales, looking after a natural oak forest, and as part of the maintenance programme, producing charcoal. Things would have been different, but I took a different path at the entrance to the wood.
Yeah, I think there comes a time in our lives where we all sort of have two paths to take, and we just take the one we take, and we can look back on it and say, well, we did what we thought was good at the time.
Yeah, I took a path I've sometimes rued but never actually regretted, and I'm still on that path. And someone else has got the big backpack, but I'm still happy to be on the path moving forward, because together we've got things to do.
Well, I can truly say, Nick, that you may be gone, partially gone, but you certainly will not be forgotten.
Thank you very much, Lynn. And yes, I'm only partly gone. It's a wicked myth that I'm completely gone. My faculties are all still here.
Lovely. Anyway, go back to your dry stone walling.
Okay, Lynn. Thank you very much.
I'll speak to you later.
Soon. Cheerio. Bye.
Bye-bye. World News. Islamic Jihad said to have Iranian Judgment Day missile. Sources said that Islamic Jihad's big surprise was a long-range, explosive-laden Iranian-made rocket. Islamic Jihad has many more surprises up its sleeve, said Abdullah Shallah, head of the terror group, said on Sunday. In an interview on an Arab satellite station, Shallah said, "We have a store of strategic weapons that we have never used, but was prepared to bring out against Israel if the war in Gaza continued." With that, he did not specify what those weapons were. World date, oh joy, boys and their toys. Australia's Muslims allegedly shocked by ISIS's Australian jihadists. Australia's Muslim community is shocked by the number of Australians who have joined the Islamic State of Israel and Syria, ISIS, a well-known Sydney Muslim community leader said after an image of an Australian national posing with the severed heads of Syrian soldiers was posted online. Australian-born ISIS fighter Khaled Sharif, who goes by the nom de guerre Abu Zakawi al-Australi, posted images on Twitter of his friend Mohammed El Omar, also an Australian national, grinning and holding up two severed heads belonging to Syrian soldiers. The two Australian nationals left the country last year to join the Islamic group that is currently fighting in Syria and Iraq. The gruesome pictures were accompanied by grisly tweets boasting about bucketsfuls of heads and cutting infidels' throats. In comments to Ashaq Al-Aswat, founder of the Sydney-based Islamic Friendship Association, Keza Trad said, "Australia's Muslim community is enraged by Sharif's tweets. World date, not so enraged they won't punish these idiots when they come back or stop colonising Australia at all. Why don't all the upset Muslims go to Syria and help Assad then?" Anglican Vicar end very near for Iraqi Christians. The end appears very near for Christians in Iraq, the vicar of the only Anglican Church in the country warned as he appealed for more help to counter the threats from Islamist militants. Faced with an ultimatum from the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, forces to convert, pay your tax or be killed, Christians in the northern city of Mosul mostly fled last week. But Canon Andrew White, dubbed the Bishop of Baghdad for his work in St George's Church in the capital, said they were trapped in the desert or in the streets with nowhere to go. "Things are so desperate our people are disappearing," he told BBC Radio 4 Today. "We have had people massacred and their heads chopped off. Are we seeing the end of Christianity? We are committed, come what may. We will keep on going to the end. But it looks as though the end could be very near." World date, and still our media will not print or speak on this subject, just keep banging on about huge families of Ghazaean kids being killed. This must be why Muslims have so many children, to provide cannon fodder and publicity when things get rough. What about the Christian babies slaughtered in Syria by Western-backed so-called pro-democratic Muslims? And finally, 2 for 1 Day Monday. A far more accurate account of events of that faithful morning that encompasses the 3 bears. Baby Bear goes downstairs, sits in his small chair at the table. He looks into his small bowl. It is empty. "Who's been eating my porridge?" he squeaks. Daddy Bear arrives at the big table and sits in his big chair. He looks into his big bowl and it's also empty. "Who's been eating my porridge?" he roars. Mummy Bear puts her head through the serving hatch from the kitchen and yells, "For God's sake, how many times do I have to go through this with you idiots? It was Mummy Bear who got up first. It was Mummy Bear who woke everyone in the house. It was Mummy Bear who made the coffee. It was Mummy Bear who unloaded the dishwasher from last night and put everything away. It was Mummy Bear who swept the floor in the kitchen. It was Mummy Bear who went out in the cold early morning to fetch the newspaper and croissants. It was Mummy Bear who set the damn table. It was Mummy Bear who walked the bloody dog, cleaned the cat's litter tray, gave them their food and refilled their water. And now you've decided to drag your sorry bear asses downstairs and grace Mummy Bear with your grumpy presence. Listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. I haven't made the effing porridge yet. And Bill and his wife Blanche went to the state fair every year. And every year Bill would say, "Blanche, I'd like to ride in that helicopter." Blanche always replied, "I know, Bill, but that helicopter ride is $50 and $50 is $50. One year Bill and Blanche went to the fair and Bill said, "Blanche, I'm 75 years old. If I don't ride that helicopter, I might never get another chance." To this Blanche replied, "Bill, that helicopter ride is $50 and $50 is $50. The pilot overheard the couple and said, "Folks, I'll make you a deal. I'll take the both of you for a ride. If you can stay quiet for the entire ride and don't say a word, I won't charge you a penny. But if you say one word, it's $50. Bill and Blanche agreed and up they went. The pilot did all kinds of fancy manoeuvres, but not a word was heard. He did his daredevil tricks, but still not a word. And when they landed, the pilot turned to Bill and said, "By golly, I did everything I could to get you to yell out, but you didn't. I'm so impressed." Bill replied, "Well, to tell you the truth, I almost said something when Blanche fell out. But you know, $50 is $50. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night. Mr Ward tweeted on Tuesday, "The big question is, if I lived in Gaza, would I fire a rocket? Probably yes." World at 8. The main point is that Israel is suffering as well. It's best the media stop being so one-sided and that we just stop reporting it at all. It's hardly our concern. When you are seen to back one group against another and the UK is directly not effective physically, fly both flags and be impartial. Another question is, would Ward defend his own country against Islam? Because now Ward is clearly demonstrating that he would not. Killer brothers flee after senior London judge gives in fundraising with a pro-Hamas organisation. While in Bradford, the Palestinian flag has been raised outside Bradford City Hall to recognise the suffering and deaths of hundreds of people in Gaza, the council said. Labour leader of Bradford Town Council David Green said the authority was not taking sides in the conflict. Mr Green told BBC Radio Leeds the flag is not being raised in support of the one side of the conflict, i.e. Hamas or the Israeli army. The flag is being flown in recognition of the suffering and death of hundreds of people in Gaza. Last week, Bradford East Liberal Democrat MP David Ward apologised for comments he made about the conflict on Twitter. Authorities fly Palestinian flag to support Hamas. Preston City Council, which is run by the Labour Party, was forced to change its plans to fly the Palestinian flag over the town hall following protests and complaints. Council leader Peter Rankin said, "I'm pleased to be able to demonstrate our sympathy with the Palestinians through raising their flag over the town hall. We are also exploring other ways in which we can help and support Gaza." But the initial plans had to be altered following complaints. Instead, the Palestinian flag flew for just 4 minutes before being replaced. The flag is then reported to have been auctioned off, raising around £1,500 and perhaps therefore making the council complicit.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday 28th of July 2014. Preston and Bradford local authorities fly Palestinian flag to support Hamas. Killer brothers flee after senior London judge gives them bail. HSBC Bank to close Muslim charity accounts as Gaza protests escalate. French police discover arsenal on bus heading for London. Anti-Semitism on the march, Europe braces for violence. Imminent and credible terror attack on Norway. An interview with Nick Griffin, President of the British National Party. Islamic Jihad said to have Iranian Judgment Day missile. Australia's Muslims allegedly shocked by ISIS Australian jihadists. Anglican Vicar end very near for Iraqi Christians. And finally, 2 for 1 day, Monday. UK News. Preston and Bradford local